Hey everybody, this is Scott from Lawrence Hypnotherapy, and today I'm interviewing Gina Mavoric. And so she's an expert on health and career, and she's got a story that we'd like to get her to share with you, and some steps and tips as to like that if you're in a career that you're doing at the moment and you find that it's just not fulfilling you, or it's draining your life in some way, or you just find that you know that you can't keep it up forever because it's just not your space, it's just not what you're supposed to be doing with your life. In this interview, this is what we're going to be tackling. So Gina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me on. I'm so excited to be here and to introduce myself to your beautiful network.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear kind of like just a bit about you. It's like that, what got you into basically helping people with basically improving their lives, improving their careers and health?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess what got me interested in helping others is that I first helped myself. So growing up, I did what was expected of me. I went to university, I studied really hard. I, straight out of university, went into a corporate full-time role, killed it, progressed in the corporate ladder, ended up managing a team of people. And then from being in that management position, major imposter syndrome kicked in, tied in with major anxiety, major mental health issues all came up overwhelmingly. And that all presented itself in very physical symptoms, which were really painful and uncomfortable for me to live through. So through my own personal healing journey and having gone through it and successfully, I guess, managed my anxiety, and I'm now in a place of mental wellness, knowing that I was able to do that just proves to me that anyone can do it if you have the right tools, the right guidance, the right support system, the right encouragement. So that's essentially what I would love to be for other people, because I know for me growing up, I didn't have that system from my family, from my parents and my dad in particular, who's a narcissist. So I like to be that person for others, because I know many of us were raised by people who, yes, loved us, but they all had their own trauma that they've never healed. So they just unfortunately inflicted their trauma onto us. So that's why I am where I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess like with our entire species in a way that like we teach fear and we teach whatever our wounds are that we can share it to the next generation. Whereas like with, you know, cats and dogs and stuff, it's like that they kind of have to experience it for themselves in order to get those phobias and fears. Whereas that we unfortunately and accidentally can kind of pass that on to more than one generation, more than 2 and 3.
100%.
And you were saying that you had quite a bit of success in the business or the work that you were doing, but it still wasn't right for you. Like, what was going on there?
Yeah, I think what it came down to, so I was a successful sales rep, to give a bit of context. I was hitting my commission, smashing my budgets, hitting all the KPIs. Though I think what it ended up coming down to was the work that I was doing wasn't aligned with my values. I was selling products that I didn't care about, that wasn't making a significant impact on anyone's life. It wasn't that important to be doing it. So I kind of did a really big deep dive inward. And for me, I dive deep through journaling. So I literally spent days journaling. What are my values? What are my interests? What do I care about? Because essentially I want my work to be around those things. And for me, I really care about holistic health. I really care about healing and environmental sustainability. So that was where I really wanted to prioritize my time and energy, especially the work that I was doing, so I could feel like I was making an impact. And I think that's where that big disconnect happened, just being misaligned with the values.
Yeah, because you were, as you were saying, like smashing your targets, and you had a team and the team was doing quite well.
Yeah, they were, though I don't know what it was, the imposter syndrome thing. It was lying to me, and I was telling myself in my head, and like, I like to call it negative shit talk. You know how sometimes you can get stuck in those negative spirals. I didn't attribute any of the success to myself. I thought it was a fluke, that I had nothing to do with it, even though I was coaching each individual person and mentoring everyone in the team and helping them with their deals and their meetings. I still just thought that I was stupid, that I wasn't good enough, and was just replaying all these old stories in my head that were really not serving me and were quite disastrous.
Yeah, so you were putting in the really helping people out, but it just didn't feel right. Like, it is kind of interesting, like how you can decentralize leadership. So instead of like you controlling everything, you can actually trust other people to make decisions. So like when a problem hits the fan, whatever that is, that you've got people in place that you've trained, that you've mentored, and then you can trust them in the battlefield to actually handle those things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kind of feeling that like that you can't take any of the credit for that.
Yeah.
Or that it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if it could be a gender issue as well. It was a very male predominant environment. So I wonder if me being one of the only females in the management team was also a subconscious factor. Though, yeah, many things came into play. Though I'm really happy to be out of there. So I guess to wrap up that story, with me journaling, I used to also journal about my ideal life, my ideal work environment, my ideal colleagues. And for me, I knew that I was good at sales. So I was like, I want to sell things that are aligned with my values. I want to be able to work from home. I want to be able to work with colleagues who I choose, who I enjoy to work with, because in my roles, I wasn't able to choose. Someone else chose for me. And oftentimes there were people I would never, ever choose to spend my sacred time and energy with. So yeah, I really feel like I manifested the work that I do now. That can sound quite cheesy, though that's how it feels to me. So, yeah.
Because with the gender thing as well, that we know that with men that are millionaires, there's like a 50-50 split between corporate and entrepreneur. So like the ones that work for someone else, they go through the ladder system and basically, continue and become a millionaire. So that's about half of the men that are millionaires, and the other half did it their own way, kind of by themselves. But interesting, like when it comes to women, it's that almost all of them are the entrepreneur that create their own environments. So for some reason, and like not saying I have any clue as to why, but we know that like in the corporate world, there is a lot less, hardly any of the women that are millionaires did it through corporate. They did it by creating their own thing or finding their own thing, designing their environments. Yeah. Basically, when you said sacred space as well, it's like that seems to be a clue, especially for females. Like if you want to do well, it might be that it has to be on your own terms, not on somebody else's.
Yeah, it does seem that way. I think that females, we tend to be more intuitive, I guess, because we're more tapped into that feminine energy, which is thankfully shifting. I love this big collective rise in feminine consciousness that's happening right now. Though, yeah, that's a really interesting observation.
Yeah, like with the paramedics, where they say that don't run to a casualty, but walk to a casualty, or else you could, might become the next one, and we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, you startle them.
Yeah, and they may have been like, a hunter-gatherer versus, the mindset of that the men would always do this, the women would always do that. And the world's very different now. Like we're not getting attacked by animals. Like we're not, and in our part of the world, we're not being attacked by famine. And so it's a very, very different world now. So like, if you fall over on the side of the street, an ambulance comes and gets you. And so that we don't need kind of like that level of, I guess, like aggression that we used to, that used to keep us alive, like that. And, dogs that would stay half awake at night to make a noise, so that when we're around a camp, if, the enemies came to attack us, the dog would make a noise and then we could then, be aware. But it's such a different world now, like where the dogs are barking at the postman and we're just sort of going like, just calm down.
It's all a matter of conditioning. I recently finished this book by Dr. Mark Wolin, It Didn't Start With You. Have you read that by any chance?
Not that one, no. I'd like to.
Highly recommend, and whoever's watching this, put it on your list. It's life-changing. It talks a lot about epigenetics and how what our ancestors and our grandparents went through, their fears and anxieties, unless they consciously healed that got passed down to our parents, which has now gone passed down to us. And I know that my whole lineage on my mum and dad's side never did any healing work. So it's not until people like you and I, or everyone watching, because I feel most people watching this are they understand about healing and, going inward and healing inner child trauma and ancestral baggage. Unless we actually take the time to rewire these things and make an effort to be better to ourselves, we're going to keep repeating that cycle. So it's so beautiful that now we're at this age where this information is being shared through the internet worldwide. And I'm really excited for the following generations, because I feel like the anxieties and the irrational fears are hopefully going to lessen. Not sure how we can help dogs and cats, but for people, I feel like we have a really good chance moving forward. And I'm so excited to be someone sharing this information as well.
Yeah, we're in such a different time. We have PhDs in our pockets or smartphones. Like anyone who's got one of these, it's like that you can look up anything. Yeah. Information, misinformation, like it's all kind of like there. Previous generations that like what we found like in the last 5 years, there's been more information uploaded, gathered, put together, organized, sold than in the 5,000 years before that.
Isn't it wild? Yeah, so wild. Yeah. Overwhelming.
So we know that like when it comes to success, we always used to say it's like that that it's education that gets you there. And we know that, yes, that's an element, but we also know now that it's not the only element, because everybody has Google and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and or just whatever they want. But there's like other elements as well that seem to be kind of like these hidden elements from people.
Oh yeah, I feel like consciousness, being aware of our patterns and behaviors, is a huge skill that people need to acquire and learn. And it's unfortunate that it's something that we tend to only be on the journey to find once we have our breaking point, once we hit that rock bottom. For me, that was experiencing terrible anxiety for close to a year, and then finally catching myself and admitting, oh shit, I actually have a real problem and I need to do something about it. Then recognizing what I need to heal. But before then, we're all just going around unconscious, just doing whatever we were taught growing up. And yeah, that and emotional intelligence, those are things that people really need, not just book smart education.
Yeah. So emotional intelligence being that, like, aware of your own patterns, aware of your own triggers. Notice where the world has power over you because you let it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you take personally?
Yeah, to expand on that, also trusting that every emotion that you feel is necessary and needs to come through, not suppressing, not hiding, not thinking it's weak to cry or express or be vulnerable, and just owning the humanity that we are and everything that we need to express.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a distinction here, because there's, with feelings, it's like that we tend to, I guess, have got the narrative of like, should you feel or should you not? And it seems like that's, it loses one of the elements, like one of the distinctions, that there's actually two parts to this at least. Like one thing you've said is like, in a way, like, don't let the world control you. And so you need to change kind of outwardly how you do, like how you feel, how you think. And on the other side, it's saying, but also let all of that occur naturally and actually do express your feelings, do express those things. And it can be confusing for people in a way like that are maybe as they're trying to figure this out. What are these two categories? Like, is it kind of like where we don't want bad habits, but we also don't want suppression? How do you define these two different things?
I guess it's not that we can say that we don't want bad habits. We're all going to have certain habits that may not be serving our higher selves, but it's about being conscious of them, letting them come out, letting whatever we feel come out, letting us, for me especially, when I did have realizations that I was shit talking myself in my head, writing them out and then being like, whoa, I'm actually saying this to myself and I'm actually damaging my mental health in such a way and being so cruel to myself. I wouldn't say this to my best friend. And then consciously rewiring it. And at the same time, feeling the grief, feeling the pain, feeling the hurt, and also feeling the sorrow for that I did that to myself. And at the same time, feeling the compassion for my parents for not knowing any better, for the way that they conditioned me. So yeah, I think it all kind of muddles into one. It's hard to, I guess, distinguish them. Though for me, it's all about just being open, honoring the feelings when they arise, not judging yourself as much as possible, because there's no point doing that. Just accepting that we had patterns, forgiving whoever instilled those patterns into us, but knowing that it's on us to rewire it. No one else is going to save you.
It sounds like the first step is awareness. Would
Definitely.
you say, because it's with kind of like notice things about yourself, but don't necessarily change them straight away, but kind of first notice them and see them. Be aware of where they came from. Like notice that, as what was the name of the book? Like, it didn't start with you?
Yes.
Yeah. So even like that, there's further steps. It's as though like that just this step alone does really start the journey, because like when you kind of notice that like imposter syndrome, you didn't invent imposter syndrome. You actually like copied it unconsciously from someone else.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
copied it. Yeah. It's like that they felt not good enough and they felt not good enough. And then we've got like this grouping of people, like where we see ourselves sometimes in an empowering way through a team, like whatever it's our football team, whether it's our gender, color, location, all these things. It can be positive when it's used constructively. There's also, in a way, like those labels as well can be used not so constructively when we see it as like, well, imposter syndrome because, you know, female and or whatever that might mean to the individual.
Yeah.
And then noticing, well, that didn't start with them. Like what they are is like they are themselves. They are their own person, bringing with them an entire history of conversations that started generations and generations ago.
Yeah.
Needing the awareness of like, well, what is that? How is it affecting me? And what would I like it to be if I designed it myself? What would I like that to be moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds.
Would you say that believing that you can is a big one, because like we tend to find in a way that people tend to not bother unless they think they have a chance.
100%. I think that's the most important with anything new you want to do in life, believing that you can or wanting to be successful in something. Though in saying that, many of us have been conditioned with many limiting beliefs that outweigh the belief. So rewiring has to occur. And for me, I did my rewiring through journaling tools. So I'll give a really brief example. Let's say my limiting belief at one time in my life was that no one wants to invest with me because I'm stupid, I'm a female, I'm young. What I would do is I would write that out. No one wants to invest in my business, and for all those reasons, and I would cross it out, because physically there's a very symbolic and energetic release in crossing that out. And then I would rewrite that statement into an empowering belief. Hundreds of people are interested in working with me, and there's going to be a perfect match to invest with me and grow my business with me. And I will just keep rewriting that. And for any limiting belief, for example, I'm stupid, quite easy, cross it out. I'm really smart, and just keep rewriting until you believe yourself. It's almost in a way where your conditioning has kind of bullshitted your brain. So now you need to bullshit your brain the other way with positive reinforcement. And those positive beliefs I then use as affirmations, and I use them multiple times per day until I really did believe what I was saying, and until I had an unwavering belief in myself to go for all of my dreams. And I'm very grateful to myself for doing that, because right now I have such incredibly high self-worth that I know that I can do, achieve, and earn as much as I desire. So yeah.
Because in a way, free will seems to be an investment. Because there's the question, do we have free will or do we not have free will? And I guess as individuals, we say free will is higher. As groups, we say that free will is lower because they fall into kind of a group behavior. And it's kind of interesting how whenever we get into psychology, the idea of free will would come up. It's are you behaving because of 6 generations ago?
Yeah, which is highly likely.
Yeah. So awareness seems to help.
Sorry. Earlier you mentioned that it is an investment in terms of free will. I think it is an investment to, have free will. It's an investment of time. Are you going to put in the time to make decisions, or are you going to let your programming decide for you?
Yeah. And from what you've described about how to actually increase your free will, you did journaling. You increased your awareness of what your words were in your head, noticing you're getting advertised this way, but you actually want to advertise back to yourself that way, the beliefs that you want to have. And so that to increase your free will, you need to use repetition.
Yeah.
And that's going to take, that takes time and consistency as well.
Oh yeah, it has to be a daily practice. It's a commitment to yourself. Dr. Nicole Lapara, who is the holistic psychologist on Instagram, highly famous right now, she talks about how one of the first steps in reparenting is keeping one promise to yourself each day. If that is 5 minutes of journaling each day, you've done well.
Absolutely. And one of the great things about journaling too is that whether you write positive or negative, it kind of has a benefit either way, because if you write negative stuff, it helps to kind of release it.
I agree.
Versus kind of just saying it in your head over and over. When you write it, it's kind of that. It's like with a school assignments. Yes. You keep repeating the answers in your head, and then you've got them. But as soon as you've taken the exam, 5 minutes after the exam, if somebody asks you a question about it, you'd be like, I don't know, it's gone.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Just getting it out of your brain. I know for me, when I was stuck in my really terrible negative self-talk spirals, just getting it out, looking at it objectively and being like, Gina, this isn't real. Why are you thinking this? Yeah, it just gets it out of your brain. And it can also help you if you are feeling overwhelmed and there's a lot happening. Just putting it out on paper just takes it out. It's kind of like when Dumbledore gets his memories and puts it in that cauldron. Gives him more space to breathe.
Yeah, if only we had one of those, that'd be great. And in a way we do, if we use journals.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus I've kept all my journals my whole life, and it's really beautiful. Maybe once a year I go through them and I can see my growth. I can see my pain. I can see what I've gone through. And it's really beautiful to see yourself progress and grow as a person. And through that, you can then show others, the method that you've gone through. I've showed my journals to so many people.
Yeah, wow. So there's a lot of vulnerability there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love being vulnerable. Even on my Instagram, I've shared videos of me crying. I've shared really traumatic domestic violence situations online. all in the hope that I can connect with other people who have gone through something similar and who have never healed, and encourage them to begin their healing journey. And every time that I have done that, I've received hundreds of messages. So for me, I know that vulnerability is the most beautiful way to connect with others, and I'm so down to do that. Even if it's a stranger, I will share my deepest, darkest, painful moments to give you permission to do the same. And there have been times, there's been 2 Uber drivers, you know, you spend a few minutes with an Uber driver, 2 times they've said, I've never told this to anyone, but and they tell me their whole story. And I'm just like, I'm so glad you finally released that. Keep on doing it. Keep on talking about it. Yeah, love vulnerability.
Absolutely. And so what are some of the things that you've achieved now? Because there was the imposter syndrome moving into where you are now. Like, where are you?
I feel like right now I'm very aligned. The work that I'm doing is aligned with my values. It's aligned with holistic health, environmental sustainability, personal development, and coaching. I love coaching other people. So for me, that's a success. Every new person that I can see has a breakthrough, that does something that has scared them. That for me is a success. I currently am working 100% full-time online through Enagic. So not many people, I believe, would know what Enagic is, though they are a Japanese company behind the technology of Kangen water machines, which are medical grade water ionizers. So through distributing these health products, I earn a full-time income, which for me is a huge success, given where I was in the past, tied to a corporate role, working 8 hours a day, unfulfilled, in a shitty office environment, being stuck in the Sydney traffic, 1 hour there, 1 hour back. And another personal success, I suppose, is 3 weeks ago, I moved to Byron Bay, which is somewhere I've always wanted to move. So yeah, that's a big success of mine as well.
Yeah. Well done. And then like now you surf, like you've got that lifestyle where you pick up the board and got the injuries to prove it.
Yeah, I'm learning to surf, still not very good at it. I can stand up, though only on the smaller waves, but yeah, I'm excited. I have a lot more free time to just do whatever feels good and following my greatest joy.
Excellent. So what I'd love to hear from you is like some steps moving forward for people. Like what's kind of either like 2 or 3 first steps that people should take that if they're not happy in their career, just generally, so like we can talk about, you know, how people can find you. But if you're happy just to share, like, just for people, like if they want to get started just from watching this,
Definitely.
What are some of the first steps?
Definitely. I first want to kick it off with steps if you are experiencing anxiety or any mental health challenges. These are 4 steps that were recommended to me from a doctor, an incredible GP who I went to when I first became aware of my really terrible anxiety. And then I'll lead into the career stuff because I feel like that has to come first, because I think if you're very unhappy, that will tie into your personal life and you may be experiencing some discomfort. So I'd love to start with that first. So 4 things, they're all self-care based. The first is exercise. Exercise every single day, move that body, move that stagnant energy, and sweat every day. Eat good, nutritious, whole foods every day. So really look after what you are consuming. I really believe in the energy that we are consuming. So the more that you can consume that is alive and not packaged, processed, the better, including drinking lots of water as well. The third thing is get a good night's sleep every night. Please prioritize that. It's so important for our health, mental, physical, and spiritual. And the 4th is 10 minutes minimum each day of conscious breathing, so deep belly breathing or meditation. Those 4 things, when my GP told me to do those for my anxiety, which by the way, he wouldn't let me label anxiety, similar to how you were talking about imposter syndrome earlier, how we kind of just label it as that, but maybe it's not really that, it's something else. He said, your anxiety is simply just stress symptoms. Let's just work on the stress symptoms. Let's reframe that. So yeah, kind of just lost my train of thought there. Those are the 4 things.
Yeah. It's interesting with something like anxiety, like there's different words, like we've got grief, anxiety, depression, anger, like words like those, they seem to have attached to them this assumption of how long they go for. So like with anger, how long do we think anger goes for? With grief, how long do we think grief goes for? With anxiety, how long do we think anxiety goes for?
Yeah.
Anxiety is one of those things where it's kind of like the society says forever.
Yeah.
With grief, we tend to go like, I don't know, 3 months, 2 years, something like that. With anger, it's like just a few minutes or the afternoon, or maybe a couple of weeks if it's particularly bad. But they're all feelings that people have.
Yeah.
And then how much of that is true, as in like it's that's how long it actually has to go for, versus labels that we've been given, or ways that we've basically put a filter over the top of the truth to give people an expectation as to what to expect.
Yeah.
How long does anxiety go for? Or does the word itself actually have an effect on people? Like if it's a label and a diagnosis, does it change their identity?
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, well, from that day, when that GP gave me those 4 tips, I implemented them all from that day. He's like, look, you can either do these 4 things, or I can put you on beta blockers. And he explained what they are, how they suppress adrenaline and that kind of stuff. And I knew many people who I was working with in the corporate environment who were on beta blockers, and I know it helps many people. But he said, look, we can do that, or you can try the holistic approach. So for me, I was like, yep, let's do it. And I was able to manage my anxiety quite successfully through that, as well as using journaling tools to rewire my limiting beliefs into empowering beliefs. Now, going back to your question on a tip for people who may not be enjoying their career, continuing with journaling, I would recommend some journaling prompts, including what is my ideal work environment? So down to the office, the space, the work environment. Are you in your bedroom? Are you at a cafe? Are you at the beach? And really getting into a lot of detail as to where you are working, what kind of work you are doing, what are your employees like, what is your boss like. List out their personality traits and really get super, super clear on what it is you desire, because it's only from that point that you can then make a decision on where to move next, what jobs to apply for next. So for me, that's just a very basic first step, is just getting clear on what it is that you want.
Absolutely. And so in a way, like to help people to do this, because people seem to take action if they can see a path, or if the pain of not changing is greater than the pain of changing. But it doesn't always have to be like pain-based. Like it's when people hit rock bottom and they have no choice, it does give them agility, the freedom to actually go and take a risk.
Yeah.
Another thing that seems to help people to take action is if they understand kind of that this actually will work for them. Like to clear that path and kind of go like, well, even if you're driving at night in the dark, you only need to kind of see as far as the headlights shine. Like those little reflectors, or those cat's eyes, or whatever they're called, that's glued to the road. You only need to see 1 or 2 of those ahead.
Yeah.
By journaling, by like writing out like what your future is, what you're kind of doing is that like, because the brain still doesn't know the difference between like if the information came from the sensory neurons, the eyes, well, the actual sensory organs, or whether those sensory neurons in the head had it developed through you journaling and imagining. So imagination and environments, they both play a role, but knowing that both of them do play a role, that we can take more advantage for ourselves of our own imaginations to create what we want, because we're already doing it. Especially when people have anxiety, that they're taking not maybe active control, but they're very active with their imaginations, because the entire world's about to end, or like he or she hates me, or whatever the story is, the narrative. And then like, I can't remember if it was like Mark Twain or something that said that most of my problems never happened.
Yeah. I think that's the same for most of us. They're all imaginative and future fear-based thinking. Yeah, that's what anxiety is. Have you heard of, I'm sure you have you heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of his teachings are around meditations and envisioning your highest, healthiest, most abundant self. And that definitely helps in rewiring. In a way, it's like tricking your brain, but why not trick your brain into a good thing rather than listening to the shit talk that is lying to you? So it's beautiful.
It's like the things that people get attached to, like there's the past, present, and future. So with the past, it's either an identity or story or a nostalgia. It's like not wanting to let go of, like in case, it's like when you swim from one side of the pool to the other, you can't do it while you're hanging onto one of the sides.
Yeah.
You got to let go. And then where you are for a little while is that you're on neither side. You're just in the water.
Yeah.
And so when letting go of the past, it's like before we get from chapter 1 in our lives to chapter 2, or if you're in chapter 100 and you're trying to get to chapter 101, it's that you've got to let go of one chapter before you get into the next. Or at least at some point, letting go has to happen. Even if the order is different, even if you find the next one first, it's still, at some point, there's got to be a letting go.
Yeah.
So that's the past. The present requires steps, as in like that, whether it's doing the journaling, doing the right eating, doing the right sleeping. It's one of those things like that. The fear could be too hard, or it's too much work, or I don't have time for that, or I don't have the energy for that. Whereas like these are, especially like, well, in Melbourne, kind of where I'm from, like there's this place called the Upper Ferntree Gully with 1,000 steps, the Kokoda Trail tribute memorial thing. And so that with these 1,000 steps, the first time I did it, the top didn't exist. It was infinite. Like the steps go all the way into forever until you get to the top. And then the next time you do it, it's kind of like that, because you can see just before you're at the top, like the steps get even steeper just before the top. So the first time you're looking at it and you're going, you are kidding me. I have to do these steps. And then the next time you do it, when you see the steps being steeper, you go, that's a clue that I'm nearly finished.
Yeah.
But in doing these steps the first time, it's kind of like, allow yourself, like, you've let go of the past and now you're in the present doing the steps. Allow yourself to kind of like not know how much energy it's going to take, because you've got this tendency to keep energy in reserve just in case you'll need it to fight off the enemies.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's a thing that, and we'll never know how much energy it takes in the first rounds.
100%. Yeah. And it often does get toughest right before it ends. And I think a lot of people during their breakdowns kind of give up, but it's like, no, you're so close to the breakthrough. It's such a cliche thing, but your breakdowns lead to breakthrough. So just keep on going, even the most painful parts. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And then with the future, people tend to sometimes have these feelings that either they can't get there, or even if they did get there, it wouldn't satisfy them.
Yeah, definitely. Also, not sure if you can hear, someone seems to be cutting hedges. Can you hear that in my background or not really?
I can't. I've got construction workers in outside my window.
Cool. If you can't hear it, that's fine. All good.
Yeah. So kind of like, as you were, saying, describe the future. Like one of the first things we need, like if we're going to like use a bow and arrow and hit the middle of the target, we need a target. Like we need to actually kind of know what that looks like to be able to identify it. It's like the brain is like this filtering system where if you, like say you buy a red car, you're going to see more red cars. Or like that, when you get pregnant, you see other pregnant people. When you give up cigarettes, you see all the smokers. Or when you're getting married, you see wedding dresses everywhere in all the shops. Like we're all those bridal shops there before. And so it's like when you write things down, you're literally telling the brain to filter for those.
100%. And that's also why a very simple journaling tool is a gratitude journaling practice, just writing down 3 to 10 things that you're grateful for every day, especially in the morning. That will wire yourself to look out for more things to be grateful for throughout the day. And it's a really beautiful thing to do.
Absolutely. So with journaling about the future, like how did that help you when you got specific about what you wanted?
Ooh. For me personally, every time I've ever done it, and I love reading back on them, everything that I've ever written down has come true. So I don't know if it's like some magical manifestation thing or if it just sets my core wants and desires out so clearly that I just go for them no matter what. Though in terms of how I want to feel each day, my mental health, my mental state, who I want to surround myself with, the kind of work that I want to be doing, I would literally write as though I was 3 months ahead or 6 months ahead or a year ahead, and just write a letter to myself about how I feel on that day. And everything came true. I ended up feeling that way. I ended up leaving that shitty job that made me feel so terrible. I ended up working online with like-minded, conscious people. It was, for me, it was a manifestation tool. So I hope it can be the same for whoever else chooses to do so.
Yeah, because like with free will, as we're saying that free will is an investment, the thing that sort of really gets people stuck is that they'll say, I don't want this, but they haven't defined what they want instead.
Yeah.
And then the brain doesn't know how to look for it, because like with kind of the brain being, there's the front, middle, back, there's the left and right, there's all these sections, and there's so much to it. But if we just sort of went like, let's say that the back, this is an overgeneralization, oversimplification. The back of it's kind of like body functions, like there's exceptions, but kind of, then we've got like the front and middle. The front, let's say, like if we call that conscious, and the middle, we call that like habit, feeling, emotion, and hormones, things like that. Because like we've got, the amygdala and things like that, the limbic system. So we've got one part of the brain that consciously wants to take control of everything, and it's small. And then we've got the midbrain, which kind of like, it has this massive amount of energy to be able to create what you want, but it's not conscious.
Mm.
And so people are trying to use the front of their brain to get results in their life, instead of using the front of their brain to advertise to the midbrain what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess what journaling can be is like that you're using your frontal lobe to train your midbrain. And then your midbrain has to then do the work.
Yeah, 100%. Plus, there's a lot of repetition involved with journaling. And I think when actually writing it out and physically moving your hand in that direction and then watching it, it helps solidify whatever you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if ever you've, or anybody has put in so much effort, but just didn't get any result or reward, often it's because like that on a daily basis, you were putting the effort in without training the midbrain to do it for you. Because the midbrain can put in a lot more effort than what you can.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to kind of like just say like, well, right now, today, I'm going to try and get $1 million. I'm going to try to find the love of my life. I'm going to try to be healthy right now. Its job isn't to do that. Its job is to put the effort in daily to train, to journal, to kind of like to teach the midbrain habits. And it can do those habits. Like, how do you walk, talk, or drive a car? Like if I asked, how many words have you said today? Like, gosh, I don't know. When you speak, what do you do with like the lips, the tongue, the vocal cords, the lungs? Do you start with a verb or a noun? Or when you walk, do you start with your right or your left foot? I'm like, I never think about those things. But at some point you did. It's like you consciously tried to do better. Like even as a child, it's like you want water or you want love and attention or whatever it is. It's like you put that effort in. And like walking was hard. It's just like we can't really remember it.
Yeah, definitely.
Allowing ourselves to be that beginner's mindset again and say that like whatever we want, we don't need that ego to say that like I need to be superior. It's that what we really want to do is to get clear. And I guess like the journaling, the health, the food, the sleep, the water.
Yeah.
Like what those things are doing, in a way, like we could basically say that they're automating us.
Yeah.
But the one part that we can't automate is, in a way, it's like making the decision to journal, making the decision to invest in our consciousness, or making the decision to like invest in free will. Like you can't play the guitar unless you've played the guitar for a while, or you can't bench press much unless you've been bench pressing for a while. And it's so the free will is that like if you've done it for enough time, your free will goes up. On day one, it's like that's the lowest amount of free will that you'll have, and journaling in a way increases that free will.
Definitely. Yeah, that's what it did for me. So hope that it does the same for whoever else may be listening or in need, or if you're all good, let someone else know that journaling can be a very powerful tool.
Absolutely. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to know more of what you know, like to get inside Gina's brain and find out what's in there?
For sure. I love connecting with new people. So if you feel called to chat with me, please reach out. You can either find me on Instagram at Gina Mavoric. I'm sure my name will pop up in the corner. It's just that all together. And my website is ginamavoric.com/learn. I've created that just for your network. So if anyone puts their information into there, their email, I would love to send them a few resources. One including a call scheduling link. I'm offering free 30-minute calls to chat about absolutely anything. It can be about mental health, breakthroughs, life experiences, challenges, work opportunities, that kind of stuff. And I'd also love to share a few things that I've created. So I've created a blog on my experience managing anxiety, which you are welcome to share with anyone who you think may benefit. And I also have quite a few resources on the work that I do, the business opportunity, if you happen to be wanting an additional income stream or wanting to learn more about it, as well as information on the science of the products that I work with.
Yeah. What would so with the world today, let's say like so many things have changed. How do you reckon the world could be like different now than what it was like besides the obvious with that we had 2020? How else has the world kind of changed in a big way in the last like say 5 years or so?
I think the way the world is changing has a lot to do with people being more in tune with their emotions and their own inner healing journeys. I think we, for a very long time, have been living in a very masculine, narcissistic based realm, and now balance is being restored. I'm quite spiritual, so I kind of just think that there'll be balance, there'll be more humanity, more peace. That's my dream. That's where I think things are going, especially because everyone that I meet, I tend to attract light workers, people who are sharing light. And I feel like that more of us are popping up, and we're just going to be spreading our light to more people, and the world's just going to become a much more beautiful, cohesive place. And I'm also hoping that things become a lot more sustainable. And my hope for the future with how things are going is that there'll be a lot more local farms, people growing fresh local produce. Yeah, not sure if that answered that question. That's just me future thinking.
Yeah. And then also, what would you say hasn't changed?
Ooh.
Like, what stayed the same no matter what? Like, even through 2020? Because, you know, like, as soon as there's a crisis, people kind of say, throw out all of the old books.
Yeah.
And we can kind of go like, no, some things still exist, as in like sleep and drink water. Like, the next time there's a crisis, those things aren't going away.
Look, it's hard for me to answer that because I feel like I've been in my own bubble. And while 2020 was so tough on so many people, especially those of you in Victoria with the extensive lockdowns, I found it as an incredible opportunity for growth, to go inward, to continue on that healing path, to continue on personal development. So in terms of what hasn't changed, I do worry that a lot of people who are glued to their television propaganda boxes and just watch the news all day, every day, that they are still just stuck in their unconscious behaviors, which is really sad. So I feel like that's what hasn't changed for some people, though I still have hope that they are eventually going to be influenced by one light worker here or there, or one piece of information that will help them get out of that, become more of a free thinker, become more of a, I guess, empowered person to improve their own life. Yeah.
Because there's different branding on in these things in a way, and people seem to associate with different people that make it look a different way. And so like when kind of like say video games came out, that we had this assumption that like males play video games and women don't. And the companies actually worked out that they can increase their money a lot if they realize that women actually do play video games. It's just that sometimes they play the same ones, but often they actually play different ones. Yeah. And so they've found things like high violence or something is sometimes like what the males will play. But like sometimes, like, you know, women will also play that as well. But a lot of women would play Candy Crush or mobile app games or Sims or something like that. It's either a simple mobile game or something like with some element of design in it. And so like the entire concept of like just how do you introduce games to people, it's like there was a different shape, there was a different branding. And so then there's people that like, as they want to get into like what we could call light work, or what we call kind of consciousness development and stuff, there's different ways that that's been branded too. Yeah. And sometimes like that it can turn people on or off depending if they associate with that particular image of it.
Yeah, that's very
so like
true.
There's the man on the stage, or there's the woman on the stage and they're the speaker. And then there's like, so we could say like there's the extrovert, whether it's male or female. And then there's the introvert who kind of does things their own way, and basically says, you know, like they're more like a forex trader or a stock or currency person, or somebody who they're an author, but they don't necessarily like want to kind of be out there on stage and speak all the time. And they've got advice which, contrary to the people who say share your goals and have accountability buddies, they say basically like keep a lot of the stuff to yourself. And to them, they might find that that's useful as a particular guide. What's a limitation that our current branding of lightworking has, or how could we, what's another version of branding that to get those people on board that you were talking about, like with the people, you would say glued to the televisions, because we could find that in their own way, they might be pro-consciousness. They might just not like the image of like, do you have to be... Do you have to be in an MLM? Do you have to be on stage? Do you have to be famous? Do you have to have social media accounts? Because there's different versions of it.
Definitely, yeah. And I get that it can be quite triggering for people. Yeah, for sure. What would be another way to reframe it, I wonder?
Because we can sort of go...
Pardon?
Oh, sorry, you go. What were you going to say?
I guess just because I've been thinking in my own way of thinking for so many years, I'm struggling to think of another way. Though at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to personal development, growth. being better to yourself. I feel like it's not healthy to be constantly consuming information and letting other people's information control your day-to-day choices. I think it's good if you're consuming information that you're interested in, that you're researching yourself, not just what is being mass consumed to many people. I think if that's the only place or the main source of your information, that can be damaging, though.
Yeah,
that's a very debatable topic.
Yeah, because the news can be one thing or the other. Let's say like if aliens landed tomorrow or today, the news could be like a really great way to find out that just happened. But then they also
landed, Scott. They've already landed. No.
Of course, I've seen Men in Black, and but yeah, like with let's say there's another thing the news does as well, is that they can have a narrative and they're kind of enforcing a narrative, or they show you a puppy and they don't always know the difference between like news and advertising.
Of course, yeah. It's all pushing an agenda. Of course, all the news outlets, when you look at the top of the pyramid, it's all controlled by one or two people. Don't people know this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's not necessarily like it's a good or a bad thing, but we know that it's there'll be corruption. So when it's controlled by like one or two people, it's kind of like we can kind of look at, well, what's their agenda, what do they want, and it'll generally serve them. Doesn't mean the whole thing is like pure evil, but it can mean that it's not necessarily being run for your benefit.
Yeah, for sure. And just on the news topic, just a little side note, when my anxiety was really bad, I recognized that consuming anything from a TV, I don't own one anymore, I haven't for a few years now, though any news that I was consuming mostly was negative information of things that were happening around me in my state, in Australia, around the world. And I kind of recognized that like, I actually don't need to know any of this information. It doesn't serve me. So I completely stopped watching the news. I haven't watched it in years, even throughout this 2020, this weird and wild year that we've had. Haven't consumed one bit of news, but I'm still aware. I still do my own research and I learn about things around the world, but I don't need to constantly be reminded of all the negative, horrible, dreadful things that are happening around the world, because for me, my life is quite joyful and beautiful, and I'd rather protect that. Some may say that that's ignorant. For me, that's protecting my energy.
Like if we think about like your serving size of food, and you're supposed to pick the right size, the news could be the same. It's like, well, what's your serving size? Because if you're watching the news for 4 hours a day, there's probably not 4 hours of information that you need.
Yeah, which is what most people do, including my parents. As soon as they get home from work, they sit down, they watch news till bedtime, and then watch a drama or something. And it's like, why are you consuming this shit?
Yeah. Well, during kind of the Victorian lockdowns, that like what I wanted to know is when can we go outside? How does this affect me?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I didn't necessarily need to watch like 2 hours of speeches and then 2 hours of speculations on those speeches.
Yeah.
Versus like something I did. I went to the backyard and started doing sales videos built online course, like that kind of thing, like anything that's to take control of like your own agenda in a way, and reading books and it's, so would you say like maybe one of the best things that we could do is perhaps to own our time, or own our own, decide how we want to spend our thoughts, feelings, actions?
Definitely. Yeah, to unplug, to just go inward. Yeah, definitely. And funny story, while I was in Sydney, once a month I go and get my nails painted at a nail salon. And during the pandemic, they stopped playing music and they started just playing Parliament, debating about what to do during this pandemic. And every time that I'd go there, I'd be like, hello, can you please change the station and put music on? I don't want to sit here for an hour listening to a debate and people yelling at each other when I'm trying to enjoy myself and have some me time. And he would always change it. He's like, okay, no worries. And then eventually got to a point where he just had music on all the time, like it used to be. I'm like, you don't need to change it up. We get enough fear from our home television. We don't need it when we go shopping and doing our nails. But yeah.
Yeah. So, because we're saying that, free will is an investment, and whatever you put into your brain, the midbrain learns it and repeats it.
Yeah.
That's why like journaling is such a really, it's a great prompt for us each day to, like you're saying, like do something physical, move the body, sleep, drink water, journal. Mm-hmm. And then often a thing that really helps people is like, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, is like get help with whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Reach out and find experts who actually wants to, give you the step up, or challenge you and basically like give you what it is that you want to be able to do.
Yeah, definitely. And not just experts, but just other humans who you know have gone through similar things to you. Like for me, my favorite resource is the holistic psychologist on Instagram, Dr. Nicole Lapara. She is a clinical psychologist who moved away from clinical psychology to holistic psychology because she recognized that inner child trauma plays a very big part in it, and connecting the mind, body, soul, spirit, all of that stuff. And she has a very similar experience to my own in terms of how she was raised, her upbringing. So yeah, I highly recommend following her and reading through all of her posts, because I've learned so much and was able to go so much deeper in my healing journey through her reparenting techniques. So yeah, that's one resource I'd love to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And people can find that on your site, or a link to it on your site?
No, she's just, it's an Instagram account and a Facebook account. If you just type in the holistic psychologist, she'll come up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I'll make sure that there's a link to your site and that under this video as well.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for sharing your time, sharing your wisdom, and basically, yeah, just like helping people to be able to see something different or to see an opportunity for themselves. If they're somewhere they don't want to be, they want to be somewhere else. What do you do? Who do you listen to? And it's like just really great to be able to, get inside your head and see kind of like, where are you going? And
yeah. And just remember that you are not stuck. You are not stuck where you are, no matter how shitty it feels. You are not stuck. There is a way out. Yeah. Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and meet a few new people through this, I hope.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any closing words, like one piece of advice you'd like to leave people with?
Follow the flow that feels good every day. That's how I live my life. I follow the flow that feels good. I try to find something joyful in each and every day. So yeah, I hope that you do the same.
Perfect.
I'm going to go jump in the ocean. It's very hot and I closed my window because of the noise. So I really need to go for a swim. So yeah.
No worries. We'll have you enjoy them. I'll
Thank you, Scott. Talk to you soon. Bye.